What would you like to see in this sector, developing this homemade bread specifically? Because cassava is one of the products you can see in almost every part of the country,
yes.
And it grows easily irrespective of what kind of weather condition you get to see it. But again, you talked about that particular fund, which was almost impossible even
to assess then.
Yes, for your own son to assess, and that's an example of what other farmers go through. If truly people are already ready to take all of this hook, line and sinker and say, let's try this cassava for size, what do you expect the government to do with regards to funding and access to such funds?
Incidentally, I indirectly alluded to that in this issue of the microfinance banks. They are the closest to the grassroots. So we need to use them to disburse these funds. The farmers are more comfortable. You know, some of these things are looked at in the offices. The microfinance sector, because that's the area that really will affect these farmers. These are the people who are going to grow this cassava that we're talking about. So the monies have to get to them to be able to get these things done. And it is easier for them to really relate with the microfinance banks, which are closest to them. So we need to really have a way of using the microfinance sector to really disburse these monies down the line. If the CBN has to think of a way, it's not just sitting down there and rolling out orders. We need to look. I'm very bothered about it because it is an issue that is very close to my heart. This issue of the microfinance banks. We need them more than ever now because we need the rural sector to really be involved in all that we are doing. So whatever we can do to nurture and corset the microfinance bank, we should do.
Well, haven't we done enough harm to those in the rural areas, especially those who produce most of these products? For instance, we've seen big-time farmers, rice farmers, cassava farmers,
yep.
maize, yam, and they all have this hope in the microfinance. Then they used to call them community banks.
Yes.
But again, some of them suffered what you would call one of the most horrific financial crisis at that point in time, because almost all their earnings and savings went down the drain. Because
there was, like I've said, that sector is very sensitive. The microfinance sector is a human-based sector. It's not like the universal bank where you are a cipher on the file. In the microfinance bank, you are a human being. I mean, imagine you go to somebody's house to go and ask for your money, the man is owing you, and then they bring his son, who had just been knocked down by an Okada or whatever. What God will you have to be able to now ask him for? So that's why these banks have to be nurtured and corseted. They need to be really, the CBN has to look at this all over again. I mean, there was a time the CBN came and told the whole country that 224 microfinance banks had their licenses withdrawn, only to discover that they made a mistake. And rather than admit that mistake, they wanted to play God. The fact was that 121 of these 224 banks were given 6 months within which to do certain things. And these 6 months hadn't expired before their licenses were yanked off. And that dealt a fatal blow to that sector. I mean, a lot of people said they will never get near. And these are the banks that are closest to the...
You know, I mean, there are some people who really don't like bread. Well, some of us don't take bread. Okay, I can't really remember the last time I took bread. For Ifeanyi, who seemed to be an expert in all of this, because we've been getting loads and loads of tweets, a very valid one is saying that if we have cheaper alternatives to bread, the demand for the product will definitely drop, and there will not be this talk about trying to develop the home-grown bread. So, you know, when we talk about other sources now, for instance, is it all about bread that we can get from the flour? I know you're not a baker, for instance. What if we talk about some other alternatives? For instance, maybe some kind of biscuits, wheat-made biscuits and the likes, and they are quite cheaper than all of this.
Maybe the bakers should be talking about it.
Can't it then deregulate the bread industry?
Well, that would be very, very attractive. But it is the bakers who can talk about that. I mean, if you talk of cassava bread, you can also talk about cassava biscuit. You can talk, because these are things that are done from wheat. So maybe it's a beginning. the bread thing is a beginning. We can now go from there and develop other derivatives from this cassava.
How do you see it affecting the nutrition of people? I mean,
you
talked about it earlier. I remember some people can't eat fine flour and they have to eat wheat flour as an alternative, and cassava doesn't exactly have as much fiber as it were, as in terms of if you're going to compare it with that of wheat. How do you see it affecting people's diets? Do you think some people are going to be complaining, some class of people, maybe diabetic people?
Yes, I know. I mean, I know that, yes, we have this, what you call the whole wheat bread as against the other type. But maybe they will have to, we will still have, before bread came, we were eating something. So, I like I said, I looked onto I logged on to the net yesterday, and they were saying that there is medicinal value in the leaves of the cassava that can also take care of diabetics and even people who have heart problems. So these are areas that we need to explore. Now that this thing has opened up this issue, maybe it's an opportunity for it to really look at what how much benefits we can derive from it. And now that we are talking of cassava bread, maybe we should also look at the alternative to this imported rice. I know that rice is grown in every region of this country. We have Ofada in the west, we have Bida in the north, and I think Abakaliki in the east. It's just that maybe the way the things are harvested. Because I remember that I had a friend, when we served some rice. He said there was too much stone inside the rice. There was too much rice inside the stone. So it was, so maybe the intention was to really serve. So these are areas that we should all look into. I'm more concerned with, because it has this domino effect. The cassava thing, our rice, let us eat our local rice. Let us find a way of being able to harvest it so that they don't contain so much stone. Then so many other things. The Minister of Agri read out these figures to us, and this is frightening. And we should think of how to have food security in this country, rather than thinking of reducing subsidies so we can now you make the common man suffer more, so that you can retain.
They've always talked about living by example. Now that the president has started, yes, sir. Well, you talk about rice and some other staple food. Yeah. Shouldn't they also make use of such foods in different occasions and gatherings, so that people, maybe when you go out, you get to see that the national cabinet is eating Ofada rice or Abakaliki rice, as well as the bread?
Why not? Maybe that would be a very desirable thing. I know that in Ogun State, for instance, our immediate past governor promised that we're going to have a factory in Ofada that will be producing, in fact, that will be packaging the Ofada rice, but never materialized. Maybe now is the time to really look at all these things. I am concerned that our currency, look, there was a time in this country when the dollar was 70 kobo. The naira was $1.50. Now today, the $1 is 160 something naira. So if we can do something to really rescue ourselves from import dependence, everything we can do will have my support.
Should we ban so much of these products that we find?
They were talking of doing that.
Find in our
alternatives.
country?
So let us develop home alternatives to all these things, and we don't need them. I mean, that's why they say necessity is the mother of invention. The CBN governor was talking of a ban the other day when we were actually devaluing the naira against the dollar, and that naira has been under pressure all the way because we are the consumer nation. What do we export other than oil? So maybe if we get these things in enough quantity, if we have enough to use, then we can also export them.
The president, while he was speaking, mentioned, that China closes borders, and when they opened, everybody knows what happened. Do you think we should also close our borders? So
we are not an island. There is this international trade organization and all that. So we need to, but when we have alternatives that we can use, we don't need to close the borders. that's one of the reasons why the industries are failing, because there's so much, across border, all these illegal things. And that's why the industries are relocating from Nigeria. You hardly have any of these major companies operating from Nigeria any longer. They go and produce those things.
It's important because you see, you have said that necessity is the mother of invention. Who knows, maybe necessity will become the mother of invention.
So for us to close our borders.
Close our borders, yes.
We, like I've said, we are not an island. We are part of the international community. So there's so much that you can do to protect your own internal whatever. So we are a member of the International Trade Organization. So we cannot just one day decide to. But if we do enough to produce what we need within our own borders, why would we have to import rice, for instance? It was, maybe we should not go into all that. It was the politicians, because they wanted to make money, that we had a plantation, a rice plantation, somewhere in Oyo North in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And rather than the government then patronizing that, I think eventually those things got burnt away because we've now flooded the country with imported rice. Let's go back to all those things. Let us make sure that we develop our local cuisine, so we don't have to depend on wheat for us to be able to try.